everyone, and welcome back to the Academy Insider Podcast. In today's episode, we're going to learn all about the academic reserve weeks at the Naval Academy. If you've heard your midshipman or a midshipman talk about 6 weeks, 12 weeks, or just, exam weeks, this episode is going to give you a deep dive into everything that goes on at the Naval Academy during those weeks. Again, the Naval Academy, it's a university, it's a college, we take exams, but unlike normal colleges which may have a midterm and just a final, the majority of our core classes at the Academy are going to have a 6-week exam, a 12-week exam, and then a final exam. So if you're interested in learning a little bit about exam weeks at the Academy, how that affects the midshipman life, how that affects specifically plebe life and plebe duties and obligations, then check out this episode. It's a super fun deep dive into this week, including all the resources that exist for midshipmen to help them academically and help them decompress and kind of handle the stress management of all of the difficulties of the Academy, especially during the exam week. You're going to love it. I think it's a super cool episode and an insight into the midshipman experience in Annapolis. So check it out, leave a comment, and let me know what you think. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a great listen. The Academy Insider Podcast is sponsored by the Vermeer Group, a residential real estate company that serves the United States Naval Academy community and other select clientele in both California and Texas. If I can ever answer a real estate related question for you or connect you with a trusted Academy affiliated agent in the market which you're in, please reach out to me directly at grant@thevermeergroup.com. You can also reach out to me on my LinkedIn page, Grant Vermeer, and I'd be happy to respond to you there. Thank you so much. And now let's get back to the episode. All right. Hey, Langston, thanks so much for taking the time today to be a part of the Academy Insider Podcast. Do you mind, before we get started, just telling us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, how you ended up at the Naval Academy, and then a little bit about your midshipman self, company, activities, kind of what you're doing now in your brigade leadership position as well.
Absolutely. So I'm midshipman first class Langston Goldenberg. I'm the brigade operations officer. I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana originally. And I applied to the Academy 3 times, so I got it on the 3rd time, but I went to Tulane for 2 years in New Orleans.
Yeah.
I'm part of 24th Company. I was on the varsity offshore sailing team my plebe year, and then I retired. I now do intramural pickleball. I'm doing the mountaineering club. I got scuba certified here. So I'm pretty involved in all aspects of midshipman life. And then last year I was the brigade conduct sergeant, so I know the conduct system quite well too.
There we go. Yeah, hopefully we'll stay away. We'll stay away from the conduct system today. But pickleball is an intramural sport now. Like you can play company pickleball intramurals.
Well, it got brought to the Academy my youngster year. So I was on the team youngster year, both semesters, and then second class year, both semesters. And then so I don't participate in intramurals as a striper.
Okay.
But it's gone now. So now it's back to the more mainstream sports. But I'm hoping to bring it back next semester when I go to be a squad leader back in my company.
Dude, love it. That's so cool. And going to college in New Orleans, probably a little bit different than being at the Academy?
Absolutely. I'm from New Orleans, so I'm used to the activities, but definitely night and day difference from going from New Orleans to Annapolis.
For sure. Well, cool. Today's episode, again, for everyone listening, is really going to be all about what we call academic reserve weeks, but what you're really going to hear is like 6-week, 12 weeks exams. And so at the Academy, we kind of have an interesting structure where, at a lot of universities, it may just be your final exam, maybe a midterm, but at the Academy, it's kind of broken up into 6-week exams, 12-week exams, then you have your finals. And so, again, I want to put this back over to you, Langston, if you don't mind, just doing, again, an explanation. When a midshipman is talking about the fact that it's 6 weeks or it's 12 weeks or they have a 6-week exam, what are they talking about? Can you kind of explain the structure of, the academic reserve weeks at the Academy?
Absolutely. So every core class, to my knowledge, follows the 6-12 weeks final schedule. Yep. Some of your majors courses will deviate, but that's a special case scenario. Mm-hmm. So typically how it will go is you'll have 5 weeks of instruction period. Usually on the last week, the last few days of that 5th week, you'll do a review, and then come the next week, on Monday through Friday of the 6th week or the 12th week, you'll have an exam week. Now, exam week at the Naval Academy is not like you have one exam and then you study all day for the next one. You have an exam from 6:55 to 7:55, and then you start a full day of class. So you're studying throughout your working work week. So you're actually going to class. You still have homework assignments. You still have papers due. But you just have exams in the morning. So you just add an extra hour to your school day, essentially.
Yep.
However, I think there's pros to that format. I think that if you take the material 6 weeks at a time, you're able to actually digest it easier. So, for example, I just took Principles of Naval Architecture and a Weapons exam, both 4-credit classes. and thermodynamics is a good one, double E. Those kind of classes, if you take it 6 weeks at a time, that way when you get to the final, you can look back at the 6 week chunks and see the important stuff. Whereas if we just had a midterm at the 8 week mark and then a final, those pieces of information might be harder to digest for midshipmen who are busy. So I think the format may be tough to adjust to, but I think overall it actually does help out the midshipmen.
Nah, absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly with you, especially with the amount, like we were talking about, the amount of courses that you're taking as a midshipman at the academy, right? When you're taking 19 or 20 credit hours to like remember all that information over the course of an entire semester, if it was just like a final exam, like it would be completely overwhelming, right? And so
Absolutely.
it's a cool structure. And when we talk about, these exams, how much do these exams count towards your final grade in the semester? And is it consistent, or kind of like you're mentioning with some majors courses, et cetera? Is it dependent on the instructor or the course? And kind of when do you learn or know kind of the weight of this exam towards your final grade in a course?
So another unique thing at the academy is we don't have a syllabus week like a normal school.
Mhm.
So typically you'll go through the syllabus in the first 15 minutes of your first day of class, and then you'll immediately go into material. So you'll get the weight the first day of class, and then you have the syllabus to refer back to. And typically, like the 6 week and 12 week weights are around like total around 25 to 30% total. So each exam could be worth 10 or 15% each. Some classes like weapons or boats, those they will have actually a 6, 12, and 16 week exam. I think plebe chemistry has the same way. Plebe physics or youngster physics has the same thing. So each exam could be 10%, 30% total for those midterms, or 6 week, 12 week, 16 week exams.
Yeah.
And then the final exam is typically like between 25 and 40%, depending on the class.
Yep.
Some exams are up to 45%. And some of those majors courses, you can have a midterm and then a final that can completely get rid of that midterm. So the structure really is up to the department and to the professor, but I'd say a standard layout would look like 25 to 30% total for your exams, and then your final would be worth another 30%.
Yeah, 100%. And I think what's really interesting too about the academy, like you're saying, there's still a very heavy weight towards the exams that you take, but there's also part of your grade, and I think this is probably different than a lot of universities, that is there for homework, for quizzes, like actual participation throughout the course, and not just, again, like I don't know the normal college experience, but just from talking to people, like there are a lot of people who just, your final exam is like the sole grade that you have in the class, right? And whether or not you show up and do homework doesn't kind of matter. But I think it's really interesting at the academy because, again, the fact is, one, you have to be at class. There's kind of no exception to that, but your homework and like quizzes play a factor into your overall grade as well when it comes to the weight. And so, all that stuff is really interesting. But what I do want to kind of mention is you talked about, in previous episodes, for anyone who's listened, if you listen to the episode with Sarah Riley, you know that the school day starts at 7:55. You mentioned that you may have to take an exam starting at 6:55. You mind talking about like what that period is during the exam week, that X week or that X period, and explaining kind of a little bit about the terminology and what it is?
Absolutely. So most core courses will take an X period exam because it's a common exam. So there's a course coordinator. There could be like 10 or 15 sections for the whole class. Yep. And everyone will take the same exam at the same time. So X period is 6:55 to 7:55. And let's say like the whole plebe class will take chemistry 1 at the same exact time. It's the same exact test. And then all the teachers come together to write the test with the course coordinator. So that way it's a fair and even playing field for everyone taking the test. And then some core courses, some majors courses, you can take it during the class period. So I think as you get higher in your academy career, like as a firstie, I just finished 6 weeks last week. I didn't take a single X period exam. So I think it just depends on the course. But most of those like plebe youngster courses you're going to be taking X period at least 2 or 3 during that week.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like you're saying, the core course just makes it, and I love the way you said it, so that everyone's on an equal playing field, right? Because if you think about it and you're like, hey, if someone took there are 12 sections of plebe chemistry or whatever, and there's some people who are taking it during first period and others who are taking it during fifth period, right? Again, you may hear people overhearing people talk about like, oh man, that exam was hard. I didn't know this question or that, right? Like I was lost, and it kind of would give people a little bit more of an insight into, what I may need to study at lunch break for, right? And so by putting it all at the X period exam, like you're saying, very equal playing field, everyone takes it at the exact same time, and it just gets it all complete at that moment, right? And it just works well for one, organizationally, but two, to make sure that all midshipmen have an equal playing field when it comes to those exams for your core courses that happen at the academy. All right. And so that's really the rundown of the structure of your 6-week, 12-week exams, the fact that you have an X period for core courses. You mentioned like life doesn't change at the academy from an academic stance. You're still going to class, right? You take that exam at 6:55, but then you take a double E exam at 6:55, but then you have double E at 10:55 for your normal course anyway. So it just continues, and class continues through the week. But I do want to shift this now because I think this affects a lot of people, especially the plebes, is how does your day-to-day life as a midshipman change during this time period when it comes to plebe duties or military obligations? And so, I want to shift this now to the midshipman life during exam weeks. And so you mentioned earlier about intramural pickleball and trying to bring that back and some of the extracurriculars. When it comes to exam week and academic reserve week at the academy, do intramurals continue? Kind of how is the shift happen with kind of the academic or physical mission at the academy?
That's a good question. So from an ops perspective, this is like one of the things I work heavily on with both the officer and the midshipman side is academic reserve week is typically protected from any military obligation that we can avoid. So there's not going to be any forestall lectures. There's not going to be any shape sessions. Mm-hmm. You're looking at class, exams, and studying. If you're a varsity athlete, you'll still have practice, but most teams on the yard will give you like a academic day if you need it. If you have like maybe a doubleheader the next day, they'll give you the day off from practice. But you're not going to have any mandatory trainings. You're not going to have any intramurals. That week is pretty much closed off to school, exams, and studying, and it's for good reason, just so you can take all that academic loading on your plate without having any external factors that can affect your exam grades.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And kind of touching on that varsity athlete perspective, right? That was how it was for us. And even for varsity basketball, again, which is something that I know well, that's what I played. And I was just in Annapolis this past week, it was the first week of the basketball season, which coincided, unfortunately, with 6 weeks at the academy. And so, again, normally most programs around the country are not only practicing every day, they're kind of doing double days for that first week. It's kind of the jump into the season. The academy, they practice, right? The Naval Academy, they practice Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. They gave everyone the day off on Wednesday to study. It was a singular day of practice. And so, it's still a lot, but there is definitely an accommodation factor for the realization that, again, 6-week exams are difficult, right? And there's a lot of time associated with studying and, like even waking up potentially earlier to take the X period exam, etc. And so, like you're saying, on a case-by-case basis, based on the team, based on the schedule, based where they're at in their season, things can adjust and be slightly different from time to time, right? And so that's kind of where we're at. Now, I do want to talk a little bit, as we mentioned, core courses are very similar, but as you get into your majors courses, a midshipman's academic experience could adjust. What has your experience or observation been when it comes to teachers during 6 weeks? Are you getting a lighter load of homework during that time, knowing that midshipmen have multiple exams and quizzes? And kind of what, in your opinion, is like the classroom like during that academic reserve week?
I think that question really depends on the professor and really the semester. I've had semesters where all the teachers have somehow linked up and I have no assignments that week and I'm just able to study. But then I've also had semesters where I've had 2 papers due. I have another test that is just during a class period. I've got homework due. So I think it all really depends. Something at the academy that's different, I think, than my experience in New Orleans at Tulane was teachers here stick to the syllabus and they do not deviate. So if the syllabus says during 6 weeks you'll have these assignments due and you will learn this Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you will learn that Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and those assignments will still be due. So like there's not going to be any deviation. I would say getting an extension here is also, the process is different. Like if you're going to ask for an extension from a professor, you better have a good reason or else they're not going to grant it, because at the end of the day, all of us have the same load. Mm-hmm. And if they're giving an extension to one midshipman because they feel like they maybe have too much, but so does everybody else. So if you give one extension, then you're going to have to give a class extension. It snowballs. So typically the extensions are pretty rigid, and depending on the semester, the professors, you get a light load, you get a heavy load. Your 6 week could be really light, but you're typically around 12 weeks, no matter what year or major, mm-hmm. It's a heavy load because you're going into Thanksgiving a week or two after. and teachers are trying to get things in before that 12-week marking period.
Yeah.
I guess it's another good thing to hit on the marking periods between 6 and 12 weeks. So like at 6 weeks, we have a marking period. That's where the academy kind of sees how you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
If you have 2 Ds or an F, you're unsat, so you lose weekend status. That doesn't necessarily affect your order of merit then, but they start restricting your privileges so that you're pretty much mandated to study. And the 12 weeks is the same thing. 6 weeks, less serious, you can still recover.
Sure.
If you're not looking good at 12 weeks, you got 4 weeks to turn it around and then a final exam. So like at that point, you probably should do nothing else but sit in your room and study.
Sure.
So it's also like a good check-in period to see how you're doing academically.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes people forget that this is a university and a military institution.
Yep.
And so sometimes you can't do both and you got to choose. Like, do I want to get good grades or do I want to make sure that I meet this obligation to make myself like look good, maybe to an officer, professor? Like sometimes you got to make the choice to see what your priorities are. Are you going to fail prono on Friday so you can get an A on your chemistry test? Are you going to do well on prono, but are you going to bomb that chemistry test? Are you going to do boards? You can take chemistry. So there's just so many different factors that like would guide your week. Those types of things will happen no matter what. The boards will still be due. The SIG sheets will still be due. Prono is still happening. So like those types of things, you'll have to decide what's more important.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, that's what you're talking about. That's what makes the academy so special. I mean, it makes it so difficult, but it makes it so special, right? Is you're put in these constant situations where you have to make tough decisions about what you're going to prioritize, where your focus lies, where you're investing your time and effort, right, through the whole experience and navigating that. And then also at the same point, right, is being vulnerable enough and self-aware enough to be like, shoot, dude, like I need help, right? I need help because again, like you're saying, especially if you're a plebe, you have signature sheets, you have boards, you have prono, you have your exams. If you're a varsity athlete or, participating in another club, like you have those obligations as well. And it can be really difficult, right? And so I kind of want to now focus and shift a little bit on what help do midshipmen have? Like if a midshipman is self-aware enough to know like, hey, proactively, I'm struggling, right? Like this is going to be really difficult. What resources do midshipmen have to prepare for exam weeks, right? When it comes to MGSP, EI, the Academic Center for Excellence, you mind touching a little bit on some of the different resources that exist for midshipmen who need a little help, especially on the academic side, and what they do at the academy to support midshipmen?
So I was a third-time applicant, so I definitely was no academic stud before I got here. So right out of the gate during plebe summer, you can sign up for what they call supplemental courses for chemistry and calculus. And essentially, one of your free periods throughout the day, you'll go to the Academic Center of Excellence, and they'll teach like that week's course on calculus, maybe in a different way, or maybe there's some practice problems, or whatever it may be for calc and chemistry. And then that follows your syllabus. So all the syllabi for like plebe, calc, and chemistry, like they're all the exact same, and they follow like the same rigid schedule. So the Academic Center can help you because they know where you're at in your curriculum that week. So that's a good option. I did that my first semester plebe year. I ended up dropping out of the Chem 2 supplemental class, but I kept the calc one. Mm-hmm. I think different things help different folks, but sure, that helped me a lot. MGSP is like midshipman led EI, and EI is for extra instruction. So like midshipmen lead groups at night, typically from like 19 to 2000 until maybe 2200. And they'll sit there and like go through practice problems. They'll go through homework, whatever you need, they'll do. And these MGSP leaders, essentially they get 1 credit on their transcript for teaching the class, and they're in charge of just helping out midshipmen. And these midshipmen that are teaching have been vetted. They all have to have like a certain grade in the class. They have to have a certain GPA. They have to, like certain metrics to hit. They have to do an interview. So like no one that's doing MGSP is going to not be able to help you with whatever you need. Yeah. EI with professors. Most professors are available from start of the day until 1600. Some of the professors that go above and beyond will be here until 2000. So like I've done EI virtually before. Like some teachers that don't work on the yard every day, like the assistant professors or the associate professors will do like research when they're not at the academy, but you can typically always reach them via Zoom or Google Meet to get help. And so I've done that multiple times. I think it's just important to note that at some point, everyone will struggle with something here. And if your struggle is academics, not being embarrassed of the struggle and just getting the help, because if you're failing here, honestly, it's your own fault because there's so many resources that can help you out.
Yep.
Even your company mates. I mean, for plebe year, I leaned on a company mate heavily to get through chemistry, and that was really important to me. And So he pretty much helped me through Chem 1 and Chem 2. But then like the next year, he was more of a STEM brain, and then we were doing a lot of writing, and so I was helping him with all of his writing. So I think it goes back and forth, and everyone has something to offer, and everyone has something to gain. So I think that's the important dynamic that you should take. Not that you're going to come in here and kill it academically, and then if you're not killing it, you're embarrassed, so you start failing, and then it just like it leads to a snowball.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more, and I think that's one of the best lessons I learned at the academy, right, is being self-aware enough to ask for help when you need help. Because like you're saying, the academy it really is hard, right? It's a really difficult experience, but like you're saying, the amount of resources that exist on the yard to help support midshipmen and help them succeed, right? Like you're saying, if you invest in that and you take advantage of those resources, like you will pass, like you will succeed, right? But it just comes down to a certain level of proactivity and a certain level of effort to actually bring those things to life. And, that one was interesting for me because I did good in school. I think I had a cumulative GPA of like the 3.334. So like school was good. But then in my first year, dude, I was a cyber major. And I had some electives that were like, you could either take, because cyber is so interdisciplinary, you could take different majors. Well, I wanted youngsters on Fridays as a second semester first year. I was like, I want youngsters on Friday. That's the most important thing. So I decided to take high performance computing, which was a 400 level computer science class, my elective for the cyber major. And I had no idea what was going on. Like we're programming way out of my level. And I was like, this is crazy. For the first time in my life at that 6 week, you talk about that marking period. I had a D, and I was like, oh my God. I was like, this is not good. I was like, I can't fail. Like, I need to graduate, dude. The second semester, first year, I was like, I have to graduate. And again, all this goes back to, though, the amount of times I went to MGSP, the Midshipman Group Study Program, with some firsties who had already taken that course to help me out. The amount of times Professor Carl Albing, my guy, like, went out of his office hours to meet with me on a daily basis to help me get through that course, right? Like, the resources exist if you are struggling and you are having a hard time. Because like you're saying, at the academy, you are going to struggle at least in one thing, whether that be academics, whether that be the military obligation, whether that be athletics, right? Like there's going to be a struggle point, right? And so you just have to be willing to ask for help. And there are so many resources at the academy to help you succeed and help you get to that point where you're getting taken care of. Right. So I just always think it's interesting because, again, it was like one of those things. Like I did fine at the academy, and then that semester came and I was like, oh, snap. I was like, I better figure this out really fast. But now I kind of want to shift to probably like the topic on most people's minds, especially for all the parents out there, which is what happens to plebes during academic reserve week. Because again, like the amount of plebe duties can be really difficult. And so I do just want to touch on how plebe life either stays the same or slightly adjusts during the academic reserve weeks. And so questions for you. Do signature sheet requirements pause? Like, so when they went through this past 6 week exam, signature sheet requirements, what about boards? Are they already done by that point? Kind of when that happens, what's kind of the process for plebes?
So this year we made boards due on September 4th. So the boards had already been completed. The SIG sheet format has changed since I was a plebe, and definitely has changed since you were a plebe.
You calling me old, dude?
So like there's no longer a SIG task associated with the SIG sheet.
Yep.
It's more about getting to know the company mates. So like a lot of the signatures, you just go, you get the signature, and then it's done. So that like doing the SIG tasks that make the SIG sheets take so long, that's gone. So that's like a stress that's, I guess, lifted up off the plebe shoulders.
Sure.
During 6 weeks, there's a carry on for the plebe. So like the chopping doesn't happen. You're still squaring corners. You're still walking in the middle of the P-way. You're still not talking in the middle of the P-way. Like those like basic plebe duties are still on.
Sure.
You're not doing morning workouts so that you can either study, get some sleep, go to next period. So the morning workouts are done. But everything else is pretty much the same. There's not prono. Like, so the 6 week and 12 week, there's not prono. So you're not worried about studying for that prono exam on Friday and doing whatever exam you have that week.
Sure.
But I'd say like the basic plebe duties are still in place, which I would say, honestly, a lot of those are there to help you, like not rating media or not using your phone during study period or enforcing study period on the company level. I think those things actually lead to plebe success. Whereas like when you are a plebe, me included, you feel like, wow, this really sucks. And like, oh, I can't use my phone. Like those types of things it's all about building good habits. So if you embrace plebe year and use those habits that you build throughout your time at the academy, you'll typically succeed. I think like kind of little anecdote from my time at the academy, typically if I see a PS5 or an Xbox in a room, I can almost guarantee that their Cooper's below a 3.0. And typically I'm pretty right. So like the more distractions you have, the habits you don't build as a plebe can really come back to bite you, because we like to say that professionalism never goes up. So if you start as a plebe, as an ultra professional, you'll probably end like with a little bit less than that as a firstie. But if you start as a bad plebe, you didn't embrace plebe year, you didn't use the training to get better, for come first year, you probably have like nothing left in the tank, and you can't get better at that because you've gotten so low. So I think it's important to build those good study habits plebe year. And I think me with 2 years of college under my belt, I already had kind of like my study habits in place. But a lot of the academy is more of a high school feel when it comes to academics, with the class periods and the kind of like the tempo of the day. So I think you could even have an advantage coming straight here, just continuing that same like 6 or 7 class periods a day tempo, because it's almost like high school where you rotate around the teachers. Like I have a Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule, a Tuesday, Thursday schedule. They're typically the same. And we have class 8 hours a day. Like all those kind of things kind of stay in place. So there is a pro and con to having college before versus coming here directly.
No, absolutely. I love what you touched on there. For anyone who hasn't listened, I did an episode with Philip Jones. He was a class of 12 graduate. He's currently he was a Marine Corps officer, and now he's the mayor of the city of Newport News in Virginia. And he talks about that thing especially, which is like, when you graduate, your habits aren't going to magically change and you're going to become a great officer if you weren't taking it seriously at the academy and building those habits as a midshipman when it comes to professionalism, when it comes to, your behavior and how you just act, right, as a person and as a leader. And so, I think that piece is really interesting. And for me, I played a little bit of NBA 2K and FIFA in my time as a midshipman. Probably didn't help with that high performance computing grade as a firstie. So I back that one. I back that piece of advice. But I do have a question. You use this term carry on as it related to plebes, like rating media or rating these things. Do you mind talking about what it means to rate something? And then with that is what this term carry on means when it relates to a plebe at the academy.
Yeah, so essentially rating something is you get to do it. So for example, at the academy, we have stairwells that it's called like a youngster ladder. So anyone who's a youngster and above can use that ladder well. So we call it, they rate it. Yep. A plebe does not rate a lot of things because they're a plebe and we're trying to build the good habits, trying to start them off with a good foundation. Mm-hmm. So typically like during the school week, plebes do not rate walking in Bancroft until 2000. After that, then they can walk. You have to square your corners. Like that's something that they're supposed to do. Then there's also like the term knowing your rates. So like a rate would be knowing a news article every day. Chow calls is considered a rate. Knowing all the 4 stripers and above, like knowing the chain of command. Those are all rates that the plebes are expected to know. Yeah. And if ever asked, they're expected to give the right answer. If not, then there'd be some sort of remediation there. Carry on is typically like a reward. So like if you win a plebe bet with an upper class, or you get shouted out by the company officer or CC for doing something good, you get carry on. So typically you won't have to chop. You'll be granted like doors closed while you're in it, because typically we have a door open policy for plebes. So when you're in your room, the door stays open until you're ready to go to sleep or you're changing, that kind of thing. And that's just so we can make sure the plebes are doing the right thing. You'd rate media with carry on. So like all those like simple plebe rates that you get taken away, you get given back with carry on.
Sweet. Love it. You mentioned like until you go to bed. Again, quite literally, is there a lights out time for plebes? And then with that is when it comes to the academic reserve week, does that get lifted? I remember being a midshipman and we had what we called blanket late lights shits. So like you could stay up to study. Is that kind of currently how it continues to operate, or what's the aspect when it comes to, again, for lack of a better term, forcing plebes to go to bed?
Yeah, I think that's enforced on a company level. So I think companies all have their own like different procedure for that. For my company specifically, so just like on a regular day, everyone is expected to go to sleep by 2300. So 11 p.m., everyone's expected to be in bed sleeping, or plebes are.
Sure.
Upper class are allowed to stay up later, but you have to be on deck after you sign. It's called TAPS. It's essentially like a roster. You sign at night to prove that you're now on deck for the rest of the night, and you won't leave until 5:30 the next morning. Mm-hmm. So once you sign TAPS, you can go to sleep. And so TAPS goes up at 2100 and it comes down at 2300. So let's say you're a plebe, you don't have an exam the next day, you go sign TAPS 2100. You want to go to sleep, you can close your door and go to sleep at 2100.
Yep.
Let's say a plebe has not signed TAPS, it's 2255. They go sign TAPS 2255. They can go to sleep, but they have like 5 minutes where they're supposed to be in bed.
Sure.
A late lights chit essentially grants you the privilege to stay awake past 2300 for whatever reason that may be. In most companies, you have to get it signed by your squad leader, and then you tape it to your door so that the company duty officer is tracking that you can stay awake later. I think that's an interesting idea about the a company blanket chit. I think it's a good idea for 6 and 12 weeks. But I'm like completely opposite. Typically at like 10 p.m., no matter what the circumstance, I'm in the bed.
Good on you.
I believe in sleep for memory and for the betterment of the next day.
Sure.
So my kind of philosophy on that is if you're staying up past 2300, most cases, obviously there's exceptions, but if you're staying up past 2300, there was some time management failure in the day somewhere. I'm taking 19 credits, applying to grad school and brigade ops, and I'm able to get in bed by 10 p.m. So I know plebes can do it if they put their mind to it.
Love it. And kind of wrap it up here. When we talk about Academic Reserve Week, the amount of stress that comes with being a midshipman, just blanket, but then you tack on all these different exams. What resources do midshipmen have if they're feeling overwhelmed and like super like over the top stressed when it comes to these reserve weeks? Again, I remember during my time, MDC, the Midshipman Development Center, was really standing up, and we kind of had there were service dogs that came in during exam week. Is that something that continues, and kind of what resources are available to midshipmen who just maybe need like a deep breath and a little assistance to kind of bring the stress levels down during the exam week?
Absolutely. Yeah. The stress is definitely real during exam week. And it may sound weird to like someone who's applying to the academy, like, oh, I wouldn't get stressed out by an exam. It's not like one exam stressing you out. It's the exams, the military obligations, the class, the homework, the plebe duties. Like once it just stacks up on you, like there can be a breaking point. And we try to avoid any breaking points. We try to catch it before then. I'd say you have a few different options. You can use your chain of command, so like always talking to your squad leader or like a company mate always helps. And you can just like talk to your problem, and typically someone will help you with your solution, whether it's like taking a watch or helping you with your homework, whatever it may be. Like midshipmen help each other, and then that is something that's really unique to here is no one's going to let you fail without trying to help you first. We have MDC, the Midshipman Development Center. They typically put on their own events. So every exam week they do like a de-stresso bar. And it's like they have snacks and like dogs, and you can like take a bag or take a pack of Oreos and like talk with your friends or whatever it may be. Everyone has their own way to like de-stress. So it's you can go take a walk on the yard somewhere. Like I typically just like go on a jog. It's really nice to get the stress out. There's like the coffee shops are open late, so like the mid stores open late, so you can go get a snack or anything like that. The chaplains are also always available. So there's always a duty chaplain. So like if you're really in a tough spot and like just need to talk to somebody immediately, there's a chaplain available 24/7, and they can talk to you. Like typically the chaplains, they're very wise. So they can talk to you through your problem, and typically 9 times out of 10, I would say they would help you solve it. If it's like super extreme, then there's like other routes you can take, but essentially 24/7, 365, the academy has resources that will always be there for you. Like no matter your problem, whether it's medical, mental, physical, there's someone here at all times that's going to help you out.
Oh yeah. Love it. Absolutely. Well, dude, thank you so much for, taking the time to be with us today and kind of give, people a little bit of background and knowledge into the 6-week exam period, 12-week exams, just the academic reserve weeks at large, so they can better understand their kids' experience or get a sense of what they may be getting themselves into. So genuinely appreciate it. The last thing I want to ask is, especially like you mentioned, you applied multiple times to get to the academy because this is something that you like really wanted, right? And really loved. And so my question to you is like, what's your best recruiting pitch? Like, why should young men and women want to go to a service academy? What's made it amazing for you? What was your motivation and inspiration to keep like applying and be a midshipman at the Naval Academy? And yeah, what's your best recruiting pitch for why young men and women should consider a service academy education?
Well, I think first and foremost, the people that you're surrounded by at the academy, they're just like top tier people through and through. You will not find 4,400 people like this anywhere else in the world. And I had to say, not even at West Point or Air Force. Only here.
Yeah, beat them.
Only here will you find that group of like driven, motivated people that are coming together, that want to serve in the Navy and Marine Corps and want to be better. I think something that's really unique is a lot of the stuff we do in the yards midshipmen run. So midshipmen also buy into the process here and enjoy holding high standards. So that's a pitch if you're like on the fence playing where to go maybe. Yeah. I think service academies in general produce probably the best network in the world. You can see it pretty much in every sector of the United States. There's a CEO or someone in the C-suite that is a service academy grad, and just having that connection gives you a foot in the door where maybe you wouldn't have in the past.
Yep.
And then I'd say my last recruiting pitch would be going to a service academy makes you unique. So Tulane, very good school. I was a Marine option midshipman there, would have commissioned the Marine Corps, same commission that you get here. And so when we're in the military, we're all the same. When you get out, I have a Tulane degree over a Naval Academy degree. Which one stands out more? And so coming to a service academy, I'm one of 1,085 people in my class. So I'm unique in that way, and no one else can take that away from me once I have a diploma. So I think the uniqueness, the network, and then also just the high caliber of people, that's what makes this place different.
Love it. 100%, man. Just double down on that to the point, which is, again, you see it more and more the older you get like me and the more separated in perspective you have. But like, again, it may sound cheesy, but like we're forged by those common experiences, right? Like these struggles, these difficulties, the life that you have, the experiences in Annapolis. And then again, just like being instilled with this sense of service, right? Like going out and making a positive impact in people's life and like holding that to your core. Again, whether you continue that in the military, whether you do it as a citizen in like civility or in government, right? And so really, really awesome opportunity. And you know, Langston, dude, like, thank you so much. Thanks so much for taking the time to be here with us today. It was like really cool to get to talk to you. It's fun getting to chat with midshipmen about all this stuff. So thanks for your time. I'll let you get back to your day. I'm sorry, I probably stole your 50 minutes of free time in the week to do this. Right. the old voluntold to come share the midshipman experience. So, dude, I really appreciate it. Yeah, absolutely. Please put them on. Let's go. So absolutely. Thank you so much. And for the Academy Insider audience, if you have any questions, please let me know, reach out, and really appreciate it. Langston, thanks again, man.
Absolutely.
All right. Have a good day.
You too.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Academy Insider podcast. I really hope you liked it, enjoyed it, and learned something during this time. If you did, please feel free to like and subscribe or leave a comment about the episode. We really appreciate to hear your feedback about everything and continue to make Academy Insider an amazing service that guides, serves, and supports midshipmen, future midshipmen, and their families. Thank you.